you some thinking that we have done as a board and with Stephanie as our CEO and her team in terms of potential next steps for the Port Severn Library. So the intent today is to share with you our thinking, not making a full decision, but just giving you our thinking based on some conversation we had at the last council meeting, and also having a fulsome review of the facilities report, which was quite helpful for us as a board to be able to look ahead to what we can and can't do for Port Severn. Could you go to the next slide, please? So, I think we went ahead. We need to go back one slide if we can. There we go. So just some very quick background, which I won't go in depth. You're all aware of the branch assessment that was completed by the library board and the inadequacies in terms of the Port Severn branch being not being able to meet the needs of the community and the greater population in the township and our permanent and seasonal Port Severn residents. And we also have data to confirm that residents in the Port Severn area are unsatisfied with the current services. So as a board, we've had a lot of conversation in the last month and a half, and we've come to, I think, we've done a pretty fulsome review of what we think we can take on, what we can't do, and a lot of involvement with Stephanie and her team to go through that. So from a next step perspective, based on the branch assessment review, which you are aware of, and the results of the township facility audit, which was very helpful for us to get a sense of whether or not the Baxter Ward Center is a good potential option for the Port Severn Library to move to. So based on that, our view as a board and our thinking to put forward to you for consideration is that the library board would like to move forward and expedite the shift of the Port Severn Library branch from the Township Community Services Building to the Baxter Ward Community Center. And at the end of the day, this is the most important piece. This would allow for our Port Severn residents to have access to a real library with similar services and programs as Honey Harbour and McTier sooner than later. So how we might get there at a very high level, Steph's just going to walk you through that for a couple of slides. That's what we wanted to bring to you today is our thinking. Over to you, Steph.
Thanks, Susan. I'll try to be quick here as well. Thanks, Karen, for manning the slideshow there. Just to sort of follow through with some next steps based on what Susan just shared, the intent of the plan would be to take a phased approach over the next 2026, 2027 calendar years. It would allow us to set up branch operations and have a full service library in place sooner rather than later, while allowing the opportunity to assess needs based on community feedback and use of the space. So as we know, we can't actually run programs in the community services building. So moving into a space like Baxter Ward would allow for that full service library to be in place without, taking on any large changes. So with the community feedback gathered, we look at any potential updates needed to the space, just based on how the community uses it, what needs come up, et cetera, and moving, from their feedback, applying those changes. Next slide, Karen. Perfect. Based on an initial review, the library board anticipates using the lounge space. This was discussed previously from a report at council. So there's the lounge space as well as 2 other rooms, which would allow for meeting space and program space. And again, moving to this location would allow for programs and then continued services that are already being offered at the community service, but really that program piece could greatly be expanded from the current location. So the footprint at Baxter also has the indoor space as well as the outdoor space, allowing a fulsome library experience, while at the same time vacating the community services building for repurposed township use. So it would open up where the library is currently using the space in that community services building. Services to be offered continue with our regular sort of support services, parking pass pickup, burn permits, dog tags, all of the sort of usual services that we do offer at our Port Severn branch currently, while also adding programs while keeping the collection and Wi-Fi and public workstations all in one area there. Next slide. The library received funding for the 2026 year to enable pop-up programming. So we did plan to, or we do plan to have pop-up programming at the Baxter Ward Community Center. This is sort of an expansion on some of the trial programs that were run last year, outdoor programs, things like that, but to enhance those pop-up programs, to bring programs and enhance those services for specifically Port 7 residents. This was planned to be a seasonal programming for that area. Executing a library move sooner rather than later means that additional funds may be required, things like painting, moving, signage, etc. Again, this would require the support of various departments to work in collaboration in order to make something like this possible. Okay, next slide. We put together a rough implementation plan. Again, you can see on the screen here, this is contingent on collaboration and capacity across various departments. But with this plan or something like this, we can review the needs once we're in this space and adjust accordingly. But it would get the library and that fulsome library experience to Port 7 residents within the 2026 season. Susan, I'm not sure if you have any additions. My screen's a little bit small here, but I think that's on the right slide. Feel free to add anything, but also if there are any questions.
No, I don't have anything to add. I think Councillor Hazelton and or Jarvis have a couple of things they might want to speak to.
All right, thank you very much. Councillors Hazelton and Jarvis, you were put on the spot.
No, they're not.
Well, I just put them on the spot.
So,
Councillor Hazelton muted himself.
if I may, can I ask Sydney, did you get an email from me recently?
Through the mayor, I've circulated it to Karen to share with the mayor.
Okay. So, first of all, I don't want to insert myself into the questioning that may come from other councillors regarding the library plans, but I thought that a resolution, a draft resolution that was put on the table, or that could be put on the table, might help focus some discussion. And so with that, if I could ask Sydney to put that up on the screen, and then that could give us some perhaps ideas of where we need to go with this. One of the key things in our minds is we've heard that the move needs to take place, and if we're going to move, it's like, okay, let's do it, and let's put a plan in place so that we can aggressively get to where we want to go. And so I'll let you read the resolution, and then seek comment.
It's a live resolution.
It's alive and getting bigger. So basically, if I could just to net it out, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that the move needs to take place. We are recognizing that we need to facilitate the move, and that there may be some investments along the way. In the investment side of things, we also recognize that the community services building will be of much more value to the township, and so there'll probably be some offsets there. And what I think we really want to do here is have us as councillors, Councillor Jarvis and I, step out of the picture because we shouldn't be there, but let our library's CEO Stephanie and Director Engel and Director Radigan work together, hopefully, to figure out what the sources of funds are and logistics are to accomplish all of this. And I put perhaps an aggressive open date target, and that may not be open to the public. It may be open as a pre-opening date recognizing that everything seems to take longer than we want it to. So let's put an aggressive date in there and see where it goes. And I'll shut up for a moment and let others talk.
Yeah, I would just add to that quickly, if I may, that, I mean, we have a realistic view of sort of version 1.0 of the new Port Severn Library, as Stephanie said. So get in there, get things running, and make sure that the programming for the summer and the new season starting from June through the fall is in place. It may mean the facilities inside are not, exactly the way we want them, but then we have the time to assess, get all kinds of feedback from the community to then have Stephanie and the team fine tune in 2027 as needed or if needed.
Director Engel, you have some comments, I see.
Through you, Mayor Coots here. This is not just a matter of moving bookshelves and materials from one building to another. We have to engage an architect and do a change of use of portions of that building. We're looking at realigning where the food bank is. We have to create another space to substitute for the meeting room, which we had proposed as Honey Harbour Landing. That would have to be updated. So there's a number of steps that need to happen for this to go into place. What I had initially spoken to the library representatives was we can certainly book programming in that space. That's what it's already available for, and start pop-up programming. But there are a significant number of steps that need to occur and funds required for those steps that haven't even been reviewed or firmly outlined. So my request at this stage is that I can come forward with a report with estimates of costs and a more realistic timeline. I don't think myself or anyone on my team has the capacity to meet a May 18th timeline for all of this to occur. And it would require building review and permits review if required, potentially engineer review.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Actually, my comments are maybe similar to Director Engel's, and I was just wanted to. Oh, we don't have a motion in front of us anymore, but that's fine. I can remember it. I remember it all. No, it's okay. It's okay. I remember it in well enough. No, it's fine. But what I was going to just comment on was that we don't have any cost estimate now for council to really be making an approval to facilitate this move, and without the scope and knowledge of what we're contemplating. I appreciate many of the clauses in the motion, but I think committing to moving the library without having this detail for council to really be aware of the investment that we're discussing today may be premature. So I could certainly support the motion to do the legwork to understand what's involved and come up with a realistic timeline and understanding of expenditures, but I don't think we're at a moment today that I can support actually doing the move without knowing what the effort and cost is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Susie and Stephanie. I appreciate what you've done here and what you're suggesting. Believe it or not, about a year or two ago, I thought this was a wonderful idea, and I still feel the same way. So imagine that. Way to go, guys. And I love your spirit, which is get her done. That's a wonderful attitude, and yes, we have to think about costs in the future, etc. I don't know about whether we need engineers or not, but who knows? We'll have to think about that. But I realize that we have to be mindful of dollars and cents and what that may mean for us in the future. So I think we need to put a little bit of thought to that. Having said that, what do you get moved in here, but what are your dreams that this is going to look like 3-5 years from now?
That's that's a good question. It's I think just for comparison's sakes, it would certainly mean that the Port 7 residents would have a similar suite of services that are available to them, collections available to them, and programming available to them, like Honey Harbour and like Matiere, because that doesn't exist today. And Stephanie and the team hear that day in and day out. So, and again, depending on when we move, how we move, and we realize there's not a budget yet, and we didn't, that's work we need to do with Mara and other people on the township team, but it may mean we move in and it's a simple start and we trial it and make sure it's going to work and look to 2027 or beyond on making it a bigger, sort of more polished library like Matiere or Honey Harbour. But we just, Stephanie and the team have the pressure from the residents that they're just, they want library services. So we're willing, certainly on the board side and with Stephanie's team, willing to try to expedite it. Is it June? Maybe not, but we just feel we need to put a stake in the ground and get those services in place for citizens.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I could just follow up on that.
Go ahead.
So I sort of get a general impression of what you're trying to do, but more specifically, maybe Stephanie, you can answer this. How many square feet are in the room that we're talking about here, and how many square feet do you envisage yourself in within 2 or 3 years?
I think it's no surprise with those who are familiar with both buildings, the CSB and the Baxter Ward. And I will say, like Director Mara and I have chatted about this, the spaces are not much different in terms of actual size. However, the use of the space is much more usable. Going somewhere into the Baxter Ward, for example, we can use it for programming. We can have bookshelves throughout the space because it's not also office space. It's not, shared use with offices and a public library or what is supposed to be a public library space. So although the footprint, I would say, is not much larger, it's much more usable. And to just sort of reiterate what Susan had just said, I think the vision is to have a library in Port 7. Right now, we have a pop-up pilot that's been running for year over year over year that has yet to be sort of wrapped up and envisioned as what it was supposed to be.
And I think to just add, Peter, if I may, to Stephanie's comment, it's also the access to the outside programming, which doesn't exist today in the community center, right? So adding the outdoor space is important because during 6 months of the year, Stephanie and the team will be using that space, which we literally just don't have today. So it's the inside and the outside's got to be kind of put together to kind of make that new library idea come to life.
Thank you for that, and I think you're right. It's basically it's better space for you guys, both in and out, and down the road you may need more square footage, but we can talk about that as we go along here. But I'm very supportive of this move. I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense. So there you go. Thanks.
Thanks.
Director Engel.
Sorry, I just didn't take my hand down.
But it was gone and reappeared. Councillor Jarvis.
Just to clarify a little further, Stephanie, what's the guidelines for square footage in a public library?
It's all based on population and catchment size. So when we looked at the branch size, there's no number one answer. Currently, Port 7, I believe, is about half of the size of what it should be based on the population. I will double check. We have those numbers from our branch assessment, but it is based on population size and divided up into sort of different communities, not just the township as a whole. So we're not just saying, Georgian Bay needs this size. It's no, this area of the township needs this size.
I doubt, Stephen, that we will meet what the assessment told us, but it's certainly, an incredible shift from what we have today.
I'm just trying to clarify for council that what we've had up till now has been very, very short on square footage space available. If any of our council team have been up to Matiere, that's more in line with something that would be suitable for both Honey Harbour and Port 7. So that's something we've got to keep in mind as we move ahead on this. dreaming big, as per Councillor Cooper's comments, would be to have a nice fully integrated branch library building in the Port Severn area. But I think in the meantime, we've got to work with what we've got. And while I appreciate that based on dollars and cents, we've got to move ahead at a slightly more cautious pace than what's being recommended here by my library team. There is a bit of a sense of urgency. The people of Port Severn have been bugging us for more space for a while, and the sooner we can offer something to them, the better. And this approach, as has been proposed through operations today, maybe it's going to be the best we can work with for right now, and it will be interesting to see how everybody reacts to it, which is great. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wojcik, please.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I've always supported a move to a bigger space and get the library in line with what it should be. But being a local myself and living here full-time and very, very close to the local population, not so much the seasonal, but the local, in the Port Severn area, to them, they're losing a space that the seniors have cards in. The Christmas party kitchen and lounge area is used. So many different weddings, where they do a wedding and then a stag and doe. And this is what the people in my area think they're going to lose. And some of them don't want to travel to Honey Harbour or to somewhere else. This has been a staple in the community for a long time. And, I've supported it all the way along, but I have to listen to my constituents because they're the ones that hire me, and I have to work on their behalf. So great presentation. I'm going to take it as consultation, and I'm going to hope there's a public meeting outside of the committee of the whole. So there's a question and answer period so the public can obtain or turn out to. So that's just the word of the public. I'm sorry I have to act on their behalf. So I wish you well, and if not the Baxter Ward Community Center, something else.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Actually, I've already had a brief chat, so I'll let Christian go before me if that's okay.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelton. And Ms. Clare, Ms. McGibbon, have any forecasted trajectories of growth within Port Severn or any models been concluded to determine how fast you'll outgrow the move if in the event that you do make the move? And the concern that I have is, we're looking at phases of Oak Bay coming online. We are now seeing a new subdivision being developed opposite of Wildwood and our municipal building. Port Severn is growing. We have condos that are potentially coming in on Port Severn Road North, where the hair salon used to be, as well as Sunny Lee. We're slated to explode here, and I wonder whether you're going to come back to the proverbial well 2, 3 years, 4 years from now and say, guys, we've outgrown it. The population is 5x what it was when we had this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, and we need to scale. And I wonder, this conversation's been, the move of the Port Severn Library has been a topic for, I want to say, the last 2 terms of council. I think your predecessors, Ms. McGibbon, were talking about this, and their predecessors were talking about this. And I wonder when the municipality is going to put, the money down to say, let's scale a large size facility for Port Severn to support the community, their requirements, their demands, their needs, and the programs that come with it. Do we proactively look at this and say we build bigger to accommodate, or do we go smaller and hope that the local population doesn't explode as quickly as it's potentially going to do so? So over to you guys on your thoughts, comments.
I can't say that we have updated statistics for you today. The new census data will be out in 2026, and that will actually give us a good sense of what you're talking about. You know, we have a limited database of Port 7 residents. We definitely want to do a survey and get input from the residents. And, you know, long-term, 5 years, if things explode, you're right, Councillor Graziano. The facility may not be big enough, but it certainly, if we were staying in the community services building, you know, it's just not going to work. If the population grows by 20% as an example and the condos go in. So it's not the perfect solution. It's probably not the long-term solution if the community continues to grow. And the last census data showed that the township of Georgian Bay was going to grow by 20% between the two census years. So it's a tough one, right? We're trying to bring the services to Port 7 residents. It seems like the most reasonable solution for us, but it may, in fact, yes, be short-term to answer your question.
Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. Perhaps I could just do a little mini history here. So the library staff came forward and gave us an update on the fact that we were grossly undersized in the Port 7 branch compared to what we should be from a library's standard perspective. So that was one element that was brought forward. Nice, good information. Perhaps what that did is that it got us thinking about what we might be able to do. And then the library staff went off and did a bunch of research and found some portable solution, giant portables, basically containers and so on. And very quickly realized in our budget meeting that was a non-starter, and so the library staff said, "Well, let's back it down from that $1 million investment, which might have been a long term, might have been medium term, and let's see what we can do by leveraging what we have in the community services building and running programs in the Baxter Ward Community Center." And so that was kind of call it end of January mindset. And then we got the facilities report, and we kind of got the feeling that we were being ushered out the door, so to speak, from the community services building because council wanted to, sorry, the township staff wanted to basically repatriate that building and all the capabilities there. And so we, the library, have taken a run in yet another direction, trying to solve this proverbial problem of how do we run a library with a reasonable size in the Port Severn area and accommodate community programming, which is a key element of the library. And so where we are today and what that resolution was intended to do was to recognize that there appears to be a need to move the library out of the community services building. I got that. There appears to be an appetite to do something with the Baxter Ward Community Center, and okay, we get that. Of course, we don't know all the things that need to be done, and Director Engel will, I'm sure, guide us on that. But the way the resolution was written was basically to recognize the things that I just talked about, and then set it up so that the combination of our CEO, 70 Clare, and Director Engel and our Director of Finance can all kind of work together with an understanding from council that they're going to be doing this, and recognizing that, yeah, there may be more funds to do this thing in the Baxter Ward to set up the library, but there's also going to be a financial offset, so to speak, for additional value to the township and the community services building. And so what we really wanted to do was set action in motion so that we're not talking about this in June again with having had no progress. Anyways, that's what the intent of that resolution is. It may not be worded the best way for everybody, but that was essentially the intention. Let's put ourselves in motion so that we're going someplace, recognizing all the pressures that we've been receiving, and let's get a hold of it and take action. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And I would agree with what Councillor Hazelton was saying. I think, if we're taking action, let's take action. But I just actually had questions for our Director of Treasury in terms of how we can better long-term plan for some of these changes. I know, we've been talking about the Refresh Mac tier and the fact that we don't have money in the long-term budget or the forecast, 10-year forecast. And how do we plan, if we're going to move the library into space at the Baxter Ward Community Center, how do we assess and work with the library board to plan for what they need longer term? So I would be concerned that we, have them in the Baxter Ward Community Center for, let's say in 3 years' time, and they have outgrown it or need different facilities, or we need the space back for the community center growth. How do we ensure that we have been planning a succession plan for the library, for the community center, and keep everything balanced across the township? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Couture to Councillor Predko. One of the key items that finance looks for, and it's the development charges background study. That outlines growth, and it outlines how much growth is happening within each area. And as a result, it outlines funding that would be provided through development charges. The latest development charges background study that was completed didn't identify growth taking place in terms of how it may appear. I believe the library has needs that potentially are outweighing the growth. So there currently is no growth projected in development charges study that would assist paying for an addition or expansion of our library services. So we look, that's where finance and operations look for growth in terms of helping to pay for such types of costs. But at the end of the day, it really is up to council and council's will. If they wish to plan for an addition to the library or an expansion, that is really up to council to ensure staff are directed to do so and add that within our budget. But something like that would result in an increase to taxes. We're still in the process of trying to update our asset management plan, so take care of our existing assets. So to add new assets on top of that, I think it is going to exacerbate the problem in terms of affordability. And hence why staff might be a little hesitant in terms of where do we add this? At what point? Because right now our major infrastructure projects are the fire halls, and that alone we're looking at $8 million, which we don't have funds for either. That will be debentured. So right now it's a balancing act in terms of affordability and needs, and how can we move forward with maintaining our existing capital and building new capital infrastructure. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I guess I just am wondering what the process would. I mean, I understand where staff is with the maintaining our assets and the capital constraints that we've got. I guess we just, it would be helpful for us to have a forum or process to at least discuss what gets added to the capital forecast in what different forms and what measures. I know it's the will of council, but we need the support of staff too. So it's something that I guess I just don't know where it all starts and how we get it moving. Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. Through you, Mayor Coetsier, to Councillor Predko. These are definitely internal discussions that we could start at any time with Director Engel as well as our CEO of the library. These can all start in-house in terms of discussions and planning to move forward, where we together as a team can come to council with a recommendation, whether it be for 2027 budget, 2028 budget. But I think the process does need to begin internally to get the ball rolling.
Okay, thank you.
CEO Mariotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Coetsier. And I want to allay any fears that may be out there that the township is trying to push the library out of the CSB building. That is simply not the case. This idea was born through the facilities conditions assessment report, and via the desire for the library to put $1 million a facility in place to expand. And so Ms. Engel has started thinking a bit creatively. Well, staff as a whole started thinking creatively. How can we kind of manage our assets more efficiently so that we're trying to minimize the debt that we're going to be incurring over the coming years? And so using Baxter Ward, sections of Baxter Ward to assist the library was one option. And I believe there was pop-up programming that was discussed. The timelines that we're seeing now, and certainly the resolution that Councillor Hazelton has put out just now, really is not fair to staff. You know, we need to walk before we run. And there is also sponsorship funding opportunities that maybe the libraries could also start looking at in the coming years to assist with the move. Certainly we want to support additional space for the library to do what they do at the Baxter Ward, but let's take things one step at a time. And as Ms. Radigan said, let's have a discussion internally in terms of what makes sense, certainly in terms of the other priorities that staff also have for other files in the township.
I would like to express a few concerns. I saw a draft motion that said things are done in 10 weeks. I think that's absurd and unfair, to be blunt. And I want to know, I mean, if I got too many questions, but one question is, I have no problem imagining the library moving to the Baxter Ward Community Center. I can see that, I'll call it the fireplace room lounge, as being a great place for programming. I know there's 2 rooms on the other side of the kitchen that could become a great place for a library. No problem with the concept. But what about all that stuff that's in those back rooms of the Baxter Ward, like all the tables and chairs and things like that? Where are they all going? How are we going to use the room next door? Do we have people lined up to just rush in and fill it up, or is it going to be empty for the next year or two? How often is the Baxter Ward Community Center actually being used, and when it's being used, what percentage of the floor space is being used? Like all these things goes into how we can timeline it through. I love the keenness of the library, and you know, but I don't think. I mean, and as has been you know, Councillor Hazelton gave us a little bit of history. We've been evolving over the last half year. What are we going to do? And you know, we've already asked staff to do a feasibility report, I believe, or something like that. Have we not? Or it's part of it. I don't remember exactly, but to me, I would love to do this as quickly as possible, but not so fast that we end up spending twice as much money as we have to, or creating all sorts of headaches that aren't necessary. And I also think that I believe it was Councillor Graziano asked a very important question of what are our needs going to be in 10 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and are we just setting ourselves up to trip over ourselves in 4 years' time? So I would love it if staff came back to us with recommendations and timelines, and it would be fantastic if it could be done sometime this year. But I think suggesting that we just all of a sudden get up and move everything in 10 weeks' time from one building to another without knowing what's going to happen with, again, all that stuff in the storage room at the back, or how long it's going, or how much renovation are we going to do or not do. I think we have to think these things through. I love the idea, in the meantime, of the library having access to the community center for programming, because we know that building is not always full of people. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And so there's definitely windows for programming, but I don't want us to rush too quickly into this. And I'm going to go to Director Engel and then Councillors Hazelton and Bocek, please.
So the recommendation out of the facilities condition assessment was not a feasibility study. We don't need to hire a consultant to do the feasibility. What we have to do is look at what would be fully involved and provide costing and whether or not it is. I don't have an concern with us being able to do it. It's to what degree, where do we move everything else? We don't want to end up in the same position as we are right now, where we decide to move it into a building and find out that you can't have public programming. So we want to make sure that we're checking all of our boxes, doing all of the steps that we have to. And that will be what was through the resolution from the facility condition assessment, that we further investigate and come back to council with the full costing of this and what steps are involved. And this was part and parcel of finding a way to reduce the cost of us maintaining our facilities as a whole. And this ties in Honey Harbour Landing, the old school, and Baxter Ward Community Center. It's not something we can just look at as a standalone because they all tie together. So that is something that it is on my work plan to further investigate and come back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. It looks like I've poked the bear a little bit on aggressive timelines, but to help you understand my context, if we were to have just used that meeting room, moving some bookshelves in and immediately being able to use that as opposed to the community services building, to me sounded like a pretty simple thing. So, I was already told that the 18th was too aggressive and I should go for June 1st, but I threw 18 in there, the May 18th, just for fun. But I'll leave that aside. I guess what is important from our library perspective is, in some respects, I kind of feel like we're chasing the unknown. We know we need more space. We thought that perhaps we should be considering, and a lot of research was done to get these portable ideas. Well, that was killed in the budget. And then we thought we were being kicked out of the community services building, so we had to come up with another plan. And so we figured let's put that, let's wrap some ideas around how we were going to be able to use the Baxter Ward Community Center. So what I now understand is we're not being kicked out. We can continue with the plan with the money that we've already had allocated for our programming services for 2026. So basically, roll back the clock to November, and we just keep on going as we thought we had from that point in time. So it's good to know that. Without having this meeting, we might not have got to that point of understanding. But I would like to ask our director, Radigan, a question here. Jazz, you said that development services charges are a driver for funding. I heard from Councillor Graziano that there's all kinds of growth in Port Severn on the east side of the 400 and in Oak Bay, and it's supposedly got all kinds of growth going on there. I'm confused because I don't understand why you would say there's no growth, and then we have somebody else saying there's all kinds of growth. What am I missing?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Hazelton. My comments are based on the background study that was completed as part of the development charges. Development charges looks at a 15-year projection, and it is an in-depth study in terms of growth and where growth is projected. And that is based on development. So they do have discussions with the planning department, and they look to the district as well for their future horizon in terms of planning and development. So my comments are based on studies that have been completed by Watson and not Watson, Hempson Consulting, and in addition to that, with development charges, it's a very specific formula that is used to determine if there are development charges that will be captured to offset expenses that are growth related. Most of the services that are library related are capped at a very minimal level. So even if there was growth, there are no funds available to fund the expansion of a library.
So follow up, Mayor. So help me understand then. We've got all kinds of development going on in Port Severn, but you're saying that there's no dollars associated with that development that can help with library costs. Is that what I'm hearing? And if so, I'm baffled because I thought that's what development charges were all about.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Hazelton. The latest development charges report that has to be posted annually showed that the library was in a negative DC balance. So if that there doesn't determine that there aren't enough funds, I'm not sure how else I can actually satisfy that. I would definitely recommend taking a look at the development charges background study, and I would be happy to defer to our CAO.
Don't know what I did here. I just okay, there it is. And again, Director Whitlib, correct me if I'm wrong, but the OBD development, the development charges were, or maybe I'm confusing myself because there's parkland fees as well, but those parkland fees were in lieu of donation of land to the GBLT. So the 5% value of all of OBD is you know, the council at the time decided to say, okay, well give those lands to the GBLT. I'm not sure about the development charges. If we got, is that the same thing, or is that no separate? Okay.
You know, I want to caution us. If we're going to spend the next hour talking about development charges and whether or not there's going to be growth in Port Severn, we'll never get to the firearm discharge bylaw. Let's get back to the library in the future. I think let's not dispute as we go forward in this discussion whether or not there'll be growth in Port Severn. We don't know how much, how quickly. I mean, we know we got a couple of properties that have been in the works for 25 years. We may be waiting another 25, I hope. So let's not get too sidetracked. The library needs more space in the relatively near future. Can we all agree to that? And what's the best thing for us to do in 2026 on that journey? Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Similar to my comments that I made last time, I'll let the rest of them worry about the finance part of it. But when you take away an asset, which is the kitchen, about a $50,000 kitchen, and the room that's used pretty extensively, and I would ask Mara maybe to dig out the figures of how often that facility is rented out, and not have a plan to do something else. You know, the Mac Tier Community Center has a kitchen, has a common area and everything else. The township needs a community center that can be used for gatherings as well too. And by relocating the library into this space, we're going to lose all that. And if there was a contingency plan to make a new community center with a kitchen and everything else, yeah, but This is something that's being lost. And that's what I'm hearing. As much as I want to see the library go bigger and better, I got to be true to what I'm hearing. Thanks for the time.
I feel like we're going in circles with our conversation. Director Engel.
Just for clarification, this would not impact rental of the facility for Stag and Does, the use of the kitchen. The gymnasium is still available. It can be separated into two community rooms. The kitchen access is directly from that. This is looking at rooms such as the one meeting room, which is very underutilized, and we don't have a lot of bookings. The primary booking that we see on a weekly basis, which is dropping off, is for senior programming. And part of the reason that it's dropping off is because the library already offers senior programming through Honey Harbour. So this would be added down at Baxter Ward Community Center to address that senior usage. So we still have the area of the facility that does get a lot of usage, such as events, pickleball. We now have lacrosse practices in there. We have volleyball. And those lunches for seniors, that would still be able to go on utilizing the gym and the kitchen.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two things. One, perhaps a working group comprised of councillors, finance, as well as the library board come together and determine kind of a course of action and start the funding process. We've heard time and time again, council ultimately can will what it is that we want. And with the direction of a working group, with perhaps one of the councillors that are on the board of the library, finance, and others, then we can definitely develop something that I think will scale for future development, future growth as well. I just, I think that this is a short-term step. And if we move into that building, as much as it may benefit the short term, we're just going to be seeing this need come back to council again, and or any future council at that. Silly question though, and perhaps we can do a quick Google search. My phone, unfortunately, just is picking up the fact that I'm in Florida and won't let me do a search. But what's the distance between Oak Bay and the Honey Harbour Library, or excuse me, school?
Do you mean the current Honey Harbour branch?
10 kilometers, Councillor Hazelton? Okay. And what's the distance between the landing and the school? Not the current branch, no, the one that's vacated right now.
Sorry, the empty old school is about 12 kilometers, and the park landing is about 10.
Okay, so it's almost smack in the middle.
Awesome, yeah.
So here we have a building that's sitting there vacant. That's not going to impact any usage, and it's within smack in the middle of two major centers that use a library. I mean, perhaps we consider that as well. Just a thought.
Chair McGibbon.
Just a couple of things. I just want to make it a couple of things clear from our perspective. It was noted in our presentation, and perhaps we should have spoke to it in more detail, but we are very clear that this is an idea that we're putting forward, and we fully expected to spend a lot of time with Mara and whatever township staff we needed to come together with and work through a plan, knowing it might not mean we open in June. But because our team, and in particular the staff, are feeling such pressure from the Port 7 residents, we kind of came together with the board and said, okay, could we make this happen for June when the season really kicks in high gear? So absolutely, we're not expecting to do this on our own. We're definitely expecting to work in coordination with the township staff and put the plan together. And we don't know what the budget is, but a comparative might be when we took over the other park landing space and we renovated that. We didn't blow the budget. It wasn't a multi-million-dollar move to clean up that space and make it usable. I don't think we're looking at it in that frame of reference for the Baxter Ward Center. The center's old. It's got some tired parts to it, but it's fully functional. And I would also throw out to Councillor Boychuk to think about all the future libraries that are being built in Canada are being built as community centers. So all of the things Mara just talked about that can still happen at the Baxter Ward Center, that fits perfectly with being at a library. It all fits together really nicely. So that we love that idea. Actually, it's better than just the library being in the Baxter Ward Center. So we're very open-minded. We are just feeling the pressure, and at the end of the day, we're there to serve the residents of the township. So we're trying to strategically find ways that we can make that happen in Port Severn. Obviously, we need to come together. We need to work with the township staff, and we're ready to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Be very brief. You need to learn to walk before you can run, but let's not crawl. Thank you.
I don't know how to convert that into anything useful, but we've been at this for nigh on an hour. I think what I'm hearing from everybody, though at different speeds, whether it's walking, crawling, running, whatever it is that we all want to see the library in Port Severn expand. We want to better serve our residents, and we don't want to run straight into a wall. So we have to find out where the door is. I got to keep playing with that analogy. I am really hopeful, and I have no doubt that the library team and the staff team will continue their conversations. Would have no doubt that if they needed council support to continue those conversations, we absolutely have it. I don't know if we need a motion, and I certainly am not in favor of a motion that says all is going to be done in 10 weeks. Sorry, Councillor Hazelton. My bear has been poked and it's clawing back. That I don't think that's fair to anyone. As much as I appreciate the ambition. Do we need a motion? I don't think so.
No.
Mariota, do you need a motion?
No, I can simply state that, as SMT together with the library CEO, we meet every week. So this can be on our topic every week.
I think we would appreciate that. All right.
But I'm glad you got my point, Mayor.
Oh, what
I didn't think it was that difficult.
Now, let's go on to staff. Well, no, we have open forum. Do we have people for open forum, or they've all run away?
We do, but can we please pass a motion to extend before we get
Okay.
into this?
Moved by Councillor Hazelton because he loves deadlines, and moved by Councillor Councillor Cooper because he has points to make. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole hereby extend past 4:30, but no later than 6 p.m. All those in favor? All right, there's enough people that's passed.
Thanks for your time today.
Yeah. Okay, do we have open forum participants?
Hello there. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Whoops. Yes, we can.
All righty. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Cotier and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Matt Robbins. I'm a fish and wildlife biologist with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, stepping in for Mark Rickman today. He would normally attend these meetings with reference to the amended discharge bylaw. So with reference to this bylaw in the Township of Georgian Bay, the OFH has been involved in these discussions since the early stages, and we would like to thank the council and staff for all the work they've done to gather public feedback and amend the bylaw to address concerns that gun owners have raised. When developing discharge bylaws, the main questions are, for one thing, what problems are we trying to solve? Is a municipal bylaw the right mechanism to address these problems? And are restrictions justifiable to achieve the stated goals? And in this case, there really appears to be very few firearm incidences in Georgian Bay that would be effectively addressed by a municipal bylaw. The updated draft is really a significant improvement, but we continue to hear from members for our part, and they are concerned that the bylaw is not necessary. It does not respect the proud heritage of Canadian hunters and shooters. It doesn't recognize the impressive safety record of these activities, and perhaps most importantly, it creates unrealistic expectations about what bylaw officers can and will enforce. So the proposed bylaw treats bows and firearms separately and acknowledges the different safety profiles of bows, which can be used as safely in a broader range of situations than guns. And that's a really great thing. However, regardless of whether the projectile's an arrow, a bolt, or a bullet, firearm owners are highly trained and conduct themselves in a safe manner by and large. And the rare individual that does not conduct themselves in a safe manner must be dealt with by police officers or conservation officers generally, typically not municipal law enforcement officers. I think that once you recognize and accept this fact, it becomes somewhat clear that many of the provisions of the draft bylaw aren't really relevant, are redundant, or even unnecessary. And I also think that we should recognize that this draft bylaw is not happening in isolation. In response to calls for action from the municipality, police services, and of course Hydro One, the MNR recently prohibited the discharge of firearms on public lands within 200 meters from the center of a Hydro One corridor within the township of Georgian Bay. And this restriction applies year-round and does not exclude the various applicable hunting seasons in the area. This prohibition in particular has a direct and significant impact on licensed, regulated, and safe hunting activities that have occurred in this area for a very long time. We've heard from LUP holders, so hunt camp holders in the area, about the impact on their long history of hunting safely and legally. And now people who have land use permits for decades with no issues are at a minimum concerned about the ability to continue hunting in the same way, and at worst, concerned about being too vocal in opposition to this for fear of losing their LUP or not having it renewed, that is. So the combination of municipal and provincial restrictions on discharge within the township has created something of an oppressive environment for gun owners. So finally, I'd just like to remind council, with all this in mind, that they do have the option of not having a discharge bylaw at all. Some municipalities recognize that existing provincial and federal legislation is really more than sufficient to deal with the kinds of incidences that we're generally worried about. And these municipalities have decided to rely on education and increased enforcement by police and conservation officers to deal with those issues. So with all that in mind, I just once again would like to thank council for the opportunity to speak and their openness to this important issue.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for open forum? I see all sorts of hands going up, but Councillor, your turn will come. Mr. Sloan.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me and giving an opportunity to speak. My name is Patrick Sloan. I'm a property owner in the township of Georgian Bay, but I also live in the nearby townships. I live in, work in Midland and have a house in Tiny Township. I also want to address the proposed discharge bylaw that's being considered. And I want to talk to council about some concerns that I have, specifically relating to unintended consequences. So the proposed bylaw seeks to identify certain prohibited areas where no discharge is permitted, but then seeks to add an additional buffer zone around those areas up to 100 meters for specifically for firearms. When I talk about unintended consequences, there are two things that I'd ask council to consider when they're reviewing this bylaw. Specifically, the first one dealing with the definitions section. When we look at what's included in the definition of prohibited area, it includes both park and park trail. And I say that the definitions as drafted is quite problematic. Park includes, for example, recreational area, which can either be owned by the township or operated. The inclusion of the word "or" is the thing that I have concerns about, as I suspect it might result in pretty significant and unintentional consequences. For example, and I'm just making up these examples to help illustrate the potential for where this bylaw as drafted could take things. If we look at the McCrae Lake Conservation Area, that's an area that's entirely Crown land, but it's serviced by the township's fire department. The fire department leaves a boat there in order for them to carry out the purposes and operations that they carry out there on a regular basis. The land is not owned by the township, but if this definition could extend to be seen as township affiliates operating there, I'm concerned that that could result in pressure on the township, again, unintendedly, through small but vocal groups that would push for enforcement of that being listed and identified and executed as a prohibited area. All of a sudden, you have 5,000 acres of Crown land plus a 100-meter buffer zone around it that now has a no discharge result. When I look at the definition of public trail, it includes very similar language. Specifically, it can either be owned by the township or the township may operate there. Again, I say that the same unintended consequences apply. Next, when we look at the setback provision of the bylaw, which is under 4.5, the 1991 bylaw currently that's in place prohibits discharge of firearms within 75 meters of a dwelling unit, specifically identified as that. That bylaw is succinct, it's easy to follow, it's easy to understand, and most importantly, it's easy for the township to enforce. The proposed bylaw, though, extends this to 100 meters and adds in additional language that includes building or structure. Again, this is problematic using this example. Let's say I own 200 acres in the township, and my property boundary is still hundreds of meters away from my neighboring dwelling. If my neighbor has in place, or worse yet, decides to erect a firewood shelter or structure at or near the boundary of my property, then all of a sudden the intention and implications of the bylaw is that I can no longer hunt within 100 meters of that structure and within 100 meters of that boundary line, even though I've been hunting my property ethically, safely, and without issue for perhaps decades. Again, I say that this is quite an unintended consequence, and I'm worried that certain members of our public might try to put pressure on the township to take the bylaw this far, even though, as I say, I think these are unintended through the drafting of it.
Mr. Sloan, you're well over your 2 minutes. If you have any other points, please make them very quickly.
This bylaw came because of safety-related concerns. And I say that the bylaw does not address those concerns. We've already heard I participated in the August open forum. I've sat patiently today since 1 o'clock when this was supposed to start. I have heard no specific examples other than the very specific Crown land related issues which the ministry and the police are investigating where there's been any firearm instances, let alone ones that the bylaw has indicated that they require more tools in the toolkits to deal with. This bylaw is completely unnecessary. And I say it creates unnecessary consequences and exposes the township to financial and staff resources that it just doesn't have. Thank you.
Councilors Bocek and Graziano, we still haven't heard the presentation. Can you be patient until we get the presentation, please? All right. I think we don't think we have anyone else for open forum. So now we're going to go into the staff report on the draft firearm discharge bylaw, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, council or committee and members of the public. Following public consultation in August 2025, council was presented with public feedback in the October meeting. At this October meeting, staff asked council what was the next steps. Council directed staff to refine the proposed bylaw and bring it back to committee of the whole, so that's why we're here today. I've reviewed and amended the draft discharge bylaw, and the key updates are as follows. The firearm definition has been revised. So the bylaw now has a definition that's more aligned with the criminal code and federal standards, which excludes paintball, BB guns, and pellet guns, as that was a concern that was brought up. So these guns are with a muzzle velocity under 500 feet per second, then that excludes it. So basically you have to have a PAL for these guns to apply to this bylaw. So this was again response to concerns raised by residents and member of the councils at the time of the meetings. The other thing I did was to remove the property size restriction. So in the previous draft, we had that 3-acre parcel piece that you couldn't shoot or discharge a gun on that piece, and that was a public concern, especially from rural and island residents. So that was been removed. As you will see in my report, I did want to reference 2 other items that came up during public feedback that I felt worthy of addressing. So while municipal bylaws cannot overwrite constitutionally protected rights, the bylaw retains explicit wording recognizing Indigenous people of Canada's protected rights. This wording is provided so that there's clarity that this bylaw will not interfere with Indigenous people of Canada, which includes Métis and Inuit as well. So the safety setbacks that have been mentioned a few times already have been maintained. So they're from prohibited areas, which are in the bylaws defined, structures remain in place to uphold public safety. And mirror other municipalities while providing permissions that if neighboring properties are too close in proximity, that there can be permission provided for that discharge of the firearm or bow. So the wording that's in this section will provide more flexibility than our current bylaw states. So our current bylaw is 75 meters from a dwelling unit, but there's no permission. So that's right now as it's written, you can't shoot within 75 meters of your own dwelling. So any dwelling, including your own. So this new draft would allow you, obviously as the homeowner, to give yourself that permission, or your neighbor if they felt so willing. So I'm here today to answer any questions. If there are any amendments required or requested by council or committee, please outline them specifically so I can draft accordingly and put it back to council.
All right, Councilor Bocek, you had your hand up for a long time. Do you want to go ahead or should I give it to Councilor Graziano to go first?
No, through you, Mayor, I'll be very brief. So if I could go first.
Go ahead, please.
So I think Matt, who was on 2 guests ago, summed up everything that were in my notes. So I'm not going to repeat it all. I'm sure everybody had a good listen. He's an expert from the hunters and anglers. So we'll let his words stand for what it is. And as far as my constituents go, they would like to see no bylaw, no improved bylaw, and if possible, repeal the old bylaw so that proper law enforcement can take care of things and not our bylaw department.
All right, thank you. Councilor Graziano.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I would agree that Matt did a brilliant job, I think, articulating and his membership's concerns, as well as the data that we heard from the OPP officer in the previous meeting, outlining that for the most part, the users of firearms within our municipality have been very safe and very respectful of the laws. And and that effectively the issue that I think was the impetus behind this matter is being addressed by OPP and MNRF. With that said, I have a few questions to staff. I see that the current proposed bylaw has removed the 3-acre lot minimum, which was a large community concern. But given the 100-meter setback from any dwelling or structure, perhaps staff can provide or furnish council here today with an analysis or mapping showing what percentage of residential properties within our township would still effectively be unable to discharge under the new setback rules. So do we have that information? What percentage of our properties would be impacted by the 100-meter setback?
Ms. King.
Through your chair, that's not something I have on hand, nor do I even know if that's possible to create. There is such difference because we don't know if me and Josh live next door to each other. If he gives me permission, then that property wouldn't be included. If you're looking for that mapping system, that would be something through the district, but that's not something I can give you offhand by any means, no.
Just for a point of clarity there, if I can, there was a comment made, and I want to make sure that I understand correctly, because in case a resident inquires about today's discussion, I want to make sure that I articulate it correctly. So if a resident or if a neighbor gives permission to a constituent, to their neighbor, to discharge their firearm on property, regardless of the 100-meter setback, that would not apply? Did I understand that correctly, or perhaps maybe am I wrong?
Chair, sorry, I'll jump in here. So under section 4.5, that's that 100-meter setback for firearms. So that has to following locations as a prohibited area and or a dwelling building structure, except with the consent of the owner or occupier of that dwelling building structure. So if that property, that building is too close to you where you're hoping to discharge within 100 meters, and if you have permission from that property owner, then there's no setback.
Okay. And I would assume that the person would have to furnish bylaw. Well, I guess the neighbor would contact them, or perhaps bylaw would receive that permission slip. Okay. The bylaw references penalties specific to the AMP system. But based on my review, and maybe I missed something, so if I did, please point me in the right direction. I didn't see a fine schedule attached. What fine amounts would residents face? Well, that's my question, and I'll add my comments afterwards.
Through your chair, I didn't attach the fines this round because that didn't change from the initial presentation of the bylaw. I worked with the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters to come up with those numbers, and we had the first offense was 300, second offense 600, third offense 900. We felt those weren't prohibitive enough that if someone did something in error and a charge was laid, they're not that's not going to be too much, but it is enough to send a message. So.
Okay, I appreciate it. So the same fee schedule would then apply to the current situation. I also noticed that there are no seasonal provisions tied to hunting season, no time of day restrictions, and no transition periods. My understanding is that most comparable Ontario municipalities include these. Is this something that we've thought of, or is this something that has been precluded intentionally? Staff?
That's not something that I've included and not something that I found in my research. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments and observations. One, I think, overall, my comments today will be much in line with the comments made by Matt and the former two councillors that have been speaking. I appreciate the drafting changes and the progress that's been made on this. I think where we're at today is a much more understandable bylaw that can be interpreted fairly in a straightforward manner. But I do think that if the impetus for starting this whole project was around the public safety that was taking with a firearm discharge that was taking along the lines of the hydro lines, we do have a Section 28 that's been issued, and while I don't think we have the information from MNR about why and how they came up with the restrictions, considering it's along the hydro corridor and it is being managed a little bit, I think, by Ontario Hydro or Hydro One, we can assume that their request was also a big factor for what the MNR eventually approved compared to what we requested. But having said that, now we have this restriction in place. I think our concern, or my concern, or the concern that was shared by community members was that the safety issues were related to firearm discharge along that corridor from people who were coming up for the day and having target practice. So if this is resolved and our concerns for public safety are diminished, the need for updating the bylaws potentially decreased. And I do agree with Matt's comments that I don't think our bylaw officers should be put in a position of trying to address an issue with somebody with a firearm. That's a responsibility that would be best handled by the OPP and the police. So updating the bylaw and having our bylaw officers engaged in a discussion with somebody who, you know, there could be an accident of any kind, and their enforcement of these types of things would be best handled by the OPP. And I think you would call the OPP anyway if there was a serious concern about public safety. So I would be very happy for us to put the draft that we have on the shelf and wait for there to be complaints in the future and a need to revisit our public safety with regards to firearms. But as of today, I think we have done an awful lot of public awareness of the issue, both on the discharge in the hydro corridor, as well as what is possible or not possible with our bylaw department and the OPP. And through this, I think we don't need to take further action, especially as we assess the impact that Section 28 is going to have on our community. So I'd be recommending to council or to the mayor that I would like to see either the current bylaw be put on the shelf until future notice, or to go back on the original bylaw and allow the OPP to handle firearm discharge issues in our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Oh, it's always nice to be a bit of a renegade, you know, disagree with everybody else. So I'm going to disagree with the previous speakers. I actually get a little annoyed when I hear people say, well, generally people respond to things and generally people follow the law. And for the most part, people are good. And I hear all of that and I think, well, why do we have any bylaws of any kind, period? Because if people are generally good and they're generally going to conform, then we don't need bylaws at all. And yet we realize that if the bylaws are really a two-step process. Number one, by crafting a bylaw, you set in motion a very clear expectation of what you want to achieve. And maybe you don't enforce the bylaws as much as you might, but the ability to not punish but educate, which apparently our bylaw enforcement officers claim is their first order of business, and educating to help understand what a bylaw is saying versus educating to understand what some lovely paragraph in a directional statement says. Those are two very different things. So I want us to understand that bylaws are not only directional, but they're much more crisp in their direction than kind of educational statements. So I heard that people don't like having new constraints that might come along that you know, might inconvenience them. And we heard an example about somebody putting a shed or something near the edge of a property, and all of a sudden, somebody can't use their firearm. Well, guess what? None of the guidelines that are being suggested here truly provide absolute safety. So when we think about the fact that even a 22 travels farther than 75 or 100 meters. So when we're talking about safety, we're not actually forcing safety. We're doing directional statements regarding safety. So, the hunters that I have polled on this have said, well, if you're truly trying to focus on safety, your regulations should be way stronger than they are. And I think that this is a beautiful compromise. I think Karina has done a great job doing research and collaborating with others. I think that we have something that should annoy only a little bit, but provide a little bit more guidance and direction towards this goal of safety for our residents. And I think we should approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. I have a written statement to read to ensure that there's no implied intent as to what my intentions are behind the comments. So allow me to do so. Throughout the public consultation process, both the survey results and the feedback received at the town hall, the residents of this township have spoken clearly. They do not support this bylaw. As their elected official, I have an obligation to bring that voice to this table and to this dais. Not to reinterpret it, not to qualify it, and certainly not to ignore it. We asked the community for their input. They gave it. If we now advance a bylaw that the majority of respondents expressly opposed, we are telling every resident who took the time to participate that their input was, if anything, decorated. That we solicited their opinion with no intentions of being guided by it. This is not how public consultation is supposed to work, at least in my eyes, and a matter of my opinion. And it's not the kind of governance that the people of this township deserve. I'm not comfortable advancing this bylaw in its current form. I would ask that we defer this matter and direct staff to present council with a clear summary of the public feedback for and against alongside the draft so that we can evaluate whether what is before us actually reflects the will of the community it affects. If it does not, then we have more work to do. And if we owe it to the people who showed up to do that work, then let's get the job done. Or forego the bylaw altogether. Thank you.
I take offense to the suggestion that we solicited community opinion to ignore it. I don't believe that, and that may not be a direct quote, but I don't think that's fair to all of us. Having said that, my concern, I'm sure, Ms. King.
Through your chair, just for clarity, in October when I brought this back for council's review, I had all the results and presented them and have them attached to the report. So all of the results, the public feedback and the survey was provided at the time when I asked what next steps are there. Just for the comment about putting it on a shelf, although I can see where you're coming in with the M&R piece, we have an old bylaw that's from 91. It's older than I am. It's not modern. If we do have to use it, it won't work the way we want it to. This one, if we're going to do it, then carry on through this process. But if they're not going to, then I would suggest that one may be repealed from 91, because if we're already in the business right now. So if I get a call when I get back to my desk and there's something going on that someone's shooting closer than 75 meters to a dwelling unit, then we will have to attend that. And with one piece of paper bylaw that won't really help us address those concerns with the community or that complainant who's relying on us to do that work. So just for clarity, those results were provided to council before this meeting, and I can send it, it's attached in the report just for clarity. Sorry.
Councillor Jarvis.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'd pitch in here a bit. I'm not a hunter. I am familiar with firearms, but I'm not a hunter. I think having all the efforts been put forth by our bylaw department on this, I think what's come before us today is worth considering, and I'm in the same mindset as Councillor Hazelton on this, and I would prefer to see this on the books as is, and if changes need to be made down the road, they can be made to it as we see fit. But I'd rather have this on the books now than not. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton. Sure. Ooh, Councillor Cooper. My apologies to both of you.
Oh, boy, you know how to get to a guy. Anyway,
I'm so sorry, Peter, you were confused about me.
Never mind. Listen, I'm with my Georgian Bay councilors on this. I think safety is an issue. I think we have something coming forward here that makes a good deal of sense. I realize that it may not be popular with some of the hunters. I'm not a hunter, but there are a lot of people we have to think about in our township, not just the hunters. There's also the safety of all our community, and that's who I represent. So I'm of the mind that we need this, and I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have spent more time talking about this firearm discharge bylaw the past year than the 1991 bylaw was ever discussed in whatever it is, 30 odd years. And yet I also heard from our bylaw department that every so often they use it as a reference when their inquiries are made. Inquiries may be made by somebody who's coming to the township, or they may be made by a neighbor wondering whether there's anything when they have concerns about a neighbor or something going on. And I think having a reference document does have value. I also have talked to a number of hunters, and yes, the ones I've talked to are a small minority of the hunters out there. I recognize that fully. But they, once they considered the bylaws, that this isn't going to change their behavior in any way. It doesn't restrict what they plan on doing. And I think that that's something that's very important for us to understand, is that for the great majority of folks in our township, whether they be firearm owners or not, this isn't going to change anything. But I do think it's important that people understand that we restrict firearm usage within 100 meters of your residence, your cottage, your home, whatever it may be, so that people understand that there is a certain element of safety built into the bylaw, even though we know that 98.67%, whatever the number is, of all people, all gun users, won't be shooting within that close to a residence anyway. So I'm concerned that part of what has happened the past year is we've made a mountain out of a molehill. And in that we asked that the firearm discharge bylaw of 1991 be updated. We've gone through a number of steps. We've listened to a lot of the input that was provided, and we've come up with what is, to me, a reasonable compromise that won't restrict the activities of the great majority of hunters, whether they be residents or visitors. And so I think a lot of the concern being expressed is exaggerated. That's my impression at this point. Councillor Graziano.
Sorry, Worship, iPad didn't want to unmute me, which I should take the hint. I respect that colleagues from the water access communities may have a different experience with this matter altogether, given that their constituencies tend not to hunt on, their dense water access neighborhoods, as well as their Muskokan rocks, and their cottages in those communities. But if we are going to move forward with this, I would suggest that we explore whether the bylaw can be tailored to address the legitimate safety concerns of water access communities as described by those water access councillors, without eliminating lawful activities on road access lands where the community has expressed support for the status quo. So essentially, is there a way that we can make a geographical distinction on the bylaws and perhaps prohibit specific areas from discharging altogether, whereas other areas it be allowed. Because again, we have a road access slash land community that very much has advocated against this bylaw and any changes to it whatsoever. Rather, I believe the majority of them want it completely repealed. And there is a municipality that has done so recently, and it has that piece of information has been circulated amongst socials by, I believe, the MacTier community recently. And I'm happy to pull the post because I did screenshot it. But I'm wondering if that's possible. So over to staff. Can we actually find a way to prohibit it in the water access community areas to satisfy and to support the water access councillors, but at the same time leave it untouched and unchanged for the communities that actually will go out and hunt on their lands, as they've been doing so for, decades. Thank you.
Through your chair, I don't think that's good practice. I have never seen that done in the bylaws that I've reviewed. And like we said, this has been a long process, so I've reviewed quite a few. Also, we have to consider the duck hunters that are on the coast that are going to be using those rock areas, that swamp areas along the coastline. So I don't think that's a good practice. I don't think that's a route probably we want to go down without, again, further public consultation, because that's not fair to one end of the community, just because we've heard from the other end that that's not what they're wanting.
Thank you. Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Just on a little bit of a tangent here, but very important, I think, when it comes to this topic, is if there's a firearms discharge infraction, we heard it could be a $300 fine. Through the AMP system, could escalate to whatever. Second time, $600. If you're found to be not using your firearm under the legislated conditions, the OPP will charge you a fine and give you a date in court to be judged. And this is where I see a big difference. I've heard nothing about if somebody wants to negotiate with the township because they don't feel that they were charged with the right thing. We don't have the judge and the jury. Provincially and federally, which gun owners are responsible to, if they're infraction, they get charged more money than what we're talking here, but they get their day in court and they get to be judged, and that's very important. So just on a side note, so everybody knows the way it's felt.
Ms. King.
So through your chair, not to go too far off track, our AMP system that these penalties would be under have a screening and hearing officer that act very much like a JP. It's the same system that throughout Ontario that the Ministry of the Attorney General has asked that municipality goes this way. There's an appeal process that we issue when we issue a penalty notice right now for any offense. They have that the appeal process. It goes through the screening officer. If they're not happy with that, they can challenge the screening officer's decision. So those ability to appeal and have your day in court, for lack of a better term, is an option with these potential fines as well.
If I can, a question before we go back to the councillors. How many fines or charges were laid under the 1991 discharge bylaw?
0 in the 10 years that I've been here.
Okay. I mean, if I were a betting man, I think the discharge bylaw would be used for education information purposes. I wouldn't be surprised in the next 10 years, very close to 0 charges would be laid. Anyway. Councilor Graziano.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to build on my my past suggestion, and perhaps it's worth doing a little bit more research on, myself included on this. But I believe that, and I could be corrected, I may be incorrect. Seguin, Perry Sound, King, Essex, and Huntsville all use area-specific provisions, maybe not specific to the discharge or discharge bylaw, but maybe other bylaws that distinguish between settlement areas and rural lands. And so if other municipalities are approaching it in this context, could we not do the same? And I wonder whether, again, we seek a deferral to better understand whether this could happen, to satisfy the suggestion on making it prohibited in some areas and or restricted in some areas, or applying the 100-meter issue in some areas, whereas others not. So I'm not sure if there's an appetite within council, but I believe some of those municipalities do differentiate between different zones when it pertains to bylaw applications. Thank you.
So through your chair, those municipalities that you referenced, those are settlement areas. So in Huntsville, the outside of Huntsville, they're okay to shoot. In town Huntsville, you can't shoot. So when I first brought this bylaw into committee the whole in May for review of last year, my 3-acre setback, that was what I did alternatively to our settlements, because our settlements are so diverse. And in Honey Harbour, like in the middle of Baxter Loop, which I've used this example before, I'll use it again, there's a 100-acre parcel in there. So that 100-acre parcel shouldn't be prohibited from hunting on that area just because they're in the town center. So that's why I use the 3 acres, which we've heard the public feedback that's out. So we're removing that. I feel we're going in a circle that may not end. Obviously there's something that you can do that with settlement areas, but I think that restrictive piece is more because it's so populated. Where out on the bay, as much as there's a lot of rock and there could be some risk and there might be people who are concerned about it, versus on land, mainland, they're not. I don't think that's a good practice when it's not about density. And I'm sure the Ontario Federations of Anglers and Hunters would feel similarly that we shouldn't be restricting an entire coastline that can be used, because there's lots of crown land there too.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Chair, I'll be very brief. I was just going to perhaps say some of the same things that Ms. King said, just she said it better. I think really we're going to complicate the bylaw unnecessarily if we start to have zones. I think we already have different criteria in this bylaw. If we have a section 24 restriction in one area, it's already fairly broken up. And I wouldn't want to speak for the Georgian Bay coast versus the inland lakes and the settlement areas. We have residents of all different interests and perspectives. We would be imposing rules differently subjectively, and I would not be in favor of doing that. Thank you.
All right. You're modifying? No. Lots of discussion. The motion that is in front of me reads, be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommend the Council approve the draft firearm discharge bylaw as presented. So far, with all the discussion that I'm hearing, it's short of the geographical separation that Councillor Graziano talked about. It's basically either for or against what exists as opposed to modifying it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the motion and call the vote, and we'll see how the vote falls.
Naturally, a registered vote, Your Worship, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommend the Council approve the draft firearm discharge bylaw as presented. And I'm passing that over to Clerk Way to take the vote.
Let the record show Councillor Graziano requested a recorded vote. Councillor Graziano, how do you vote?
Nope.
Councillor Hazelton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Jarvis, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Predko, how do you vote?
No, with comments after the vote.
Councillor Bocek, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Cooper, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Kutsier, how do you vote?
Yes, with comments after the vote.
Not how this works.
Well, see, if Predko can do it, I can do it.
Let the record show the motion's carried 4-3.
Councillor Predko, your comments?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I had some editing comments on the draft, which I will share with Ms. King after the meeting. I didn't raise them because I didn't realize we would vote on the exact wording that was presented today.
Well, I'm sure Ms. King would be open to making modifications before, because this is I'll call it a step towards it coming in front of council. And I vote.
So I'm sorry, Worship, point of order?
Yes, sir.
Did we vote on something that will be changed after the fact? Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
We said that, yeah, this could be approve this draft firearm, but it is when it comes in front of council, Ms. King might suggest modifications for consideration.
I have a hard time voting for something that's going to ultimately be changed after the fact. I think that that's counter to our procedural bylaws, is it not?
No, because this is committee of the whole, nothing is finalized until council approves it.
Will this not go through the consent agenda?
Potentially, and somebody could pull it.
So we would have to watch out for the changes rather than being informed of the changes here and now? I'm sorry, this is a very odd suggestion for something to happen this way. It's quite strange in my eyes. Thank you.
Clerk White.
Common practice and past practices that we followed, if something is approved via draft at committee of the whole or approved as the draft is presented, if it comes forward exactly as is and there's no changes, we've put it under the consent agenda. If there have been changes, then we've brought it forward as a staff report to highlight what those changes are.
I'm going to make a further recommendation in my point of order then. If there are any changes that are recommended by any councillor here or thereafter, that it comes back to Cal for discussion rather than for consent and or to council for final ratification. Thank you.
Councillor Precca.
My changes are so minor, they wouldn't be along the lines of typographical, so I will not make any changes.
Okay. And my comment after the vote is I voted yes, because I think we've been talking around this in circles forever, and I wanted the discussion to move forward. Okay. Do we have any more? No. So, moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 4:48 p.m. to reconvene on April 14th, 2026, or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.